I'll give it a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Hi, everyone joining us. We're just going to give it like another couple of seconds or so. Maybe we'll go to like 402 or 403 and be wild, Lauren. Uh, and then we'll get started up. In the meantime, of you who are actually here, if you want to just say hello in the chat, tell me where you're from, and then we'll start up the Q&A. Also, we'll have that going during the session. As things come up, we'll try to leave a little bit of time for questions, and whatever we don't get to, we'll be sure to follow up via email on. I see. I just got a message that our chat is disabled, so I will double check that. Um, in the meantime, we'll start with some introductions. My name is Gisela Delgado. I'm an IgAN patient of 30 years or so, 6 years post transplant this February. We're going to talk today a little bit about one of our favorite topics, is just nutrition, and CKD, but also just an IgA nephropathy. We keep it a little bit more specific because we are very fortunate and lucky. Today's special guest is actually Lauren Levy, and Lauren Levy sits actually on our medical and scientific advisory board for the IgA Nephropathy Foundation. And she's actually been helping us with preparing some blog content and nutritional content, and is a great resource and a renal dietitian. So she actually knows her stuff, and a great person to follow up with if you do have more specific questions. I know that she's always willing to, try to see um, how she can help. And with that, Lauren, I'll let you introduce yourself and we can talk a little bit about what we're going to go over today.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, thank you, Gisela, for having me. Thank you to the IgAN Foundation as well. I'm going to start and pull up my slides. We're going to be talking about holiday cooking, and here we go. Okay, perfect. Can you see me all right?
You're looking good. You're
Okay,
doing well.
perfect. Okay. On my side, it's a little frozen. So you just warned me. So today we're going to be talking about holiday cooking for CKD. And as Gisela mentioned, I always do everything tailored for IgA nephropathy because you all are special and wonderful. And there's a little bit of nuance and difference from just the general CKD population information. So I want to make sure that, yes, I am a renal dietitian, but I also have a true passion for working with you all. And so I want to make sure that we reflect that too in our talking. So we're going to be going through general kidney nutrition principles related to cooking and holistic ways to enjoy your holiday with simple recipe modifications. This session is not geared towards learning about CKD diets or eating patterns. It really is about enjoying your holiday meal. And since we're in November, this presentation is focused much more on Thanksgiving related meals. I have and am going to try and end kind of early so that I can answer your questions, especially related to cooking and recipe modification, and get into some fun. I'm also going to have some examples of swaps throughout this. So hopefully you'll get a lot of really good information as we go along. First and foremost, please remember these cooking tips as we talk. Choosing frozen foods is a way to really make your meal less expensive, a little bit easier and user-friendly, as well as honoring cultural food practices or holiday traditional meals. We are not trying to somehow make our holiday meal or Thanksgiving meal unflavorful, less tasty, and there is no reason why you need to give up your favorite recipes in order to meet your health needs. We are going to talk through ways to maybe make slight adjustments so they can still fit in. Using in-season fruits and veggies, not feeling obligated to do organic per se also helps with food cost. Leaving out the salt is always helpful because there are always things and additions like gravies or the salt shaker for other people who want to add more salt into their foods to do so. Think about your favorite foods that are on the Thanksgiving dinner table and think through, is there a way to reduce added sugar or fat to make it just a little bit healthier? Freezing or sharing leftovers so you don't have to be worried that this is the only time you're going to get a chance to have these things. And ask for help. This is a big lift if you're hosting, if you don't know how to do something. You know, it's about being together and sharing the day with whomever you're sharing it with. And even if you're alone, just making it special. So asking for help is also important. As I start to say, we're not going to go through specific recommendations and why, but because every person is on their own individual path through their CKD journey, this means that many of the things I'm going to tell you may or may not apply to you. So I want you to think through and identify now as watching this, what is your goal for nutrition care in general? Are you looking to prevent further damage of your kidneys? Are you looking to maintain good nutritional status and lessen the risk for progression of heart disease? Are you trying to keep your transplanted kidney healthy and minimize any type of side effects of medication risks? These whys for you are super important on what things you can not have to worry about for this meal and what things you should worry about for any type of meal. When it comes to Thanksgiving related or holiday special occasion related stuff, we want to think first safety. After safety, we then look towards best practices and so forth. When it comes to specific IgAN considerations, regardless of where you are in your own journey, setting up your plate to have half of the plate be veggies, considering gluten-free options when possible, looking for lower sodium options and swaps, which we're going to talk about, not forgetting about incorporating movement throughout the day. This is something I think sometimes we do forget or miss many times when we have a special day because it is so busy. But taking the time for yourself or to share with others and going for a walk or go do a yoga class or a 5K or incorporating movement in whatever fashion you enjoy and can enjoy with others. And then obviously you want to have a good time and enjoy the day itself.
Yeah, wait, I'm gonna do a quick plug, Lauren, there because we still have our IgAN Step Up Challenge happening through the end of the month. So I think just came to me as you were saying that we should definitely have our own little version of a turkey trot maybe over that weekend virtually. So we'll definitely plug something out there. But if we could get everyone to commit to trying to get 10,000 steps in over that weekend, you know, from Thursday to Sunday, I think that'd be a great little mini challenge to set out there. And I will make sure everyone has that. But you can go to bigteamchallenge.org and sign up. It's for free. And we've already made it across the US from San Francisco to New York City. We have a guess on how many times we're going to make it back and forth. But we are, thank you, Amanda, on how many times we can get it back and forth. But yeah, fun little challenge, and you can just see how all of us working together, those steps really add up. So yeah, incorporating movement, small movement, just like small changes in your diet can really have a big impact. So I'm excited to
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing how quickly we did all get across the country. So it'll be cool if we can make it on the way back too. So when we go through kidney friendly eating, we want to dissect our plate, so to speak, or the day based on salt and water, protein, potassium, and phosphorus. And depending on where you are in that spectrum, you may be able to ignore certain things and you may need to focus. So again, going back to your why as we go through this. When it comes to salt and water, we want to remember that high salt drives blood pressure. And then if you are on a fluid restriction, holiday meals oftentimes do incorporate extra sources of fluid that you might not think about. Things like alcohol, tea, soup, ice cream, anything that is liquid in your mouth counts as fluid. So we do want to remember that. And when it comes to meal prep options around salt and water, you can use no added salt canned products. It doesn't mean that you cannot use canned or packaged goods. You just want to rinse them when possible. Read the food labels for their salt content, because sometimes things are not labeled no added salt. Sometimes they just don't have salt in it, which is wonderful. And consider adding frozen or fresh veggies into that meal prep. So you can always dilute out a high salt meal or a high salt side by adding some low salt vegetables to it, fresh vegetables. But do make sure when you're utilizing frozen products, watch out to read the label for meats, because many times frozen meat, like frozen chicken, can actually have preservatives injected into it to bulk up the piece of meat. And sometimes that is salt. So make sure to read the label for sure. And then allow people to add salt at the time of the meal. So a lot of times I work with people and they say, well, my partner or my so-and-so, they like their food salty. Well, they can add it. You can't take it out once it's in. So just remember that, as well as things like gravy is very high in salt or sodium. And so you can always add a little bit back if you want to, but by sticking to generally low salt products, then you don't really have to worry about it when you get to the table. Protein. So protein can be meat, animal products, animal protein can be harder on the kidneys, and it can also be high in potassium. So if you are someone who is worried about preserving function, has been told to limit the amount of animal protein, you want to make sure that your turkey or your meat is not the main event on your plate. So build your plate in a balanced way with the majority of it coming from plants or sides. And then if you're going to enjoy your animal or turkey or any type of meat products, make those smaller portions, as well as understanding where the protein is on your plate. If you build a plate of sides and you leave off the turkey, in our house, I call it vegan Thanksgiving with a side of turkey. And if you take that mindset to it, you're still getting plenty of protein in other things on your plate. You want to remember that beans and legumes and lentils, tofu are all other high protein sources, tempeh, but there is protein in things like quinoa and whole grains. And so you will get a decent amount of protein throughout your meal, most likely. And when it comes to meal prep, like I said, fill your plate with those veggies inside first. And then when you do have any type of animal products, especially when we think about turkey and brines for turkey, that you're going to have salt in there. So you want to use low salt or salt-free seasonings, as well as preserved meats. So those of us who may not have turkey or don't like turkey on Thanksgiving, we think about ham potentially, and that can be a very high source of salt. So you want to think through what your protein portion is going to be, and then from there you can then build around it. And then we have potassium. It is good and important to understand that this potassium is a safety issue. We need for our own to keep our heart health correct and our heart rhythm correct. We need to keep potassium in range. With that being said, the National Kidney Foundation standards around potassium are you limit potassium when your potassium is high. If you don't have high potassium, you don't necessarily have to be super restrictive. So it's better to be able to know what foods, have a general understanding of what foods are high in potassium, so you can make the choices of building your plate with mostly lower potassium foods if you have potassium issues. And then you don't have to do so much food math around how much can I have on my plate. Some simple meal prep ways to incorporate a variety of foods is you can double boil potatoes to reduce potassium. The way that you do that actually is to peel and dice up your potato, put it in water, bring it to a boil. About halfway through, ditch the water, refill with fresh water, and then boil again until it's done. What this does is it's called leaching. It removes the potassium, pulling it from the potato into the water. And so this is a great way to significantly reduce the potassium in your potatoes. If you are having something like mashed potatoes, it also really doesn't change your end product because we were going to boil the potato till it was complete anyway. The other great tip around potassium that I love is soaking beans overnight. And I especially love this little hack when it comes to canned beans. So I have, they're lentils, but same process. When you have a canned or vacuum packed product, like these lentils or any type of bean, you can ditch the water out of it, rinse it, put it in a bowl and fill the bowl with water. Leave that Tupperware of water and beans in your fridge overnight. And then the next day when you go to prepare them, ditch the water, and that removes a very large amount of potassium out of those beans. So if you're going to do a 3-bean chili or something and you're worried about the potassium, this is a great, easy way to do it. Your beans were already canned to begin with. They were sitting in water. So it's not going to also change your end product as well. It just takes like a 5-minute mindset of thinking, oh, what am I going to eat tomorrow? And then make recipe swaps for lower potassium choices. And this is our next slide. So I really love this slide because it goes through what are high sources and what are those simple swaps that I can just naturally make a food choice that is lower in potassium, so no one even realizes that we have to worry about potassium. A great potato or yam, so any color potato is high in potassium or rich in potassium. A nice swap for that is cauliflower, as well as any type of cooked greens. When we cook things like spinach or any type of green, they tend to shrink when we cook them. And when they shrink, now we've got a lot more. You think about spinach. When you throw spinach on a fry pan, it shrinks to nothing. And so fresh spinach has a lot lower potassium than cooked spinach because the cooking process just really condenses the amount of leaves. However, arugula is a good raw alternative that is low in potassium, and kale it's not only lower in potassium, but it holds up to the cooking process more than spinach does. So it's a nice potassium swap. Beans for soaked beans. condensed milk for non-dairy milk. So swapping out the condensed milk in a recipe for a non-dairy alternative can definitely lower the potassium and phosphorus in that product. Artichokes are pretty high. So if instead of serving artichokes, you want to serve green beans, that's a great way to do it. And switching out pumpkin pie for apple crisp is a great dessert alternative that's naturally lower in potassium. As well as most of our winter squashes, which are so delicious, are high in potassium. So if you boil them, remember that boiling thing, you can lower the potassium content. But one winter squash that is naturally lower in potassium is spaghetti squash. And phosphorus. For those of you who do need to be aware of phosphorus, reading food labels is the best choice. As you're going through picking up the foods for your meals that you're going to make, read those food labels. And if you're going to attend a Thanksgiving meal or a holiday meal that does not actually, that you're not in charge of, and you take phosphorus binders, just make sure to take your binder with the meal. Enjoy yourself. Phosphorus is an important long-term mineral. This is not something that has to do with safety in one day. Naturally choosing vanilla or a fruit dessert over chocolate, so that apple crisp over a chocolate tart or chocolate pudding is a good choice, and using less dairy in whatever throughout the meal or as a dessert. So how do we handle the day of the meal? This next section I want to go through really talks about like, okay, so what do I do with my day? If I'm the host, if I'm the guest. Ultimately, we're looking to make sure that you look at the schedule ahead, plan ahead. Make sure to make some time for movement. And if you have not joined the IgAN walking challenge, this is the time to get those steps in and do it with a pet, a friend, a family member, or by yourself with an audiobook or podcast on. It can really help to not only help your health, but your stress level as well. Enjoy yourself, fill your plate with vegetables, eat as usual, and remember that the day is just one day in your life and to have fun with others. And if you are the host, you're going to follow these same type of principles, but you really need to make sure to prioritize yourself and get that opportunity for your stress break. So schedule ahead how you're going to do your meal prep. Are you going to have to be cooking all day? Can you make things a couple days ahead so now you're not rushing, so you can take the opportunity for yourself to incorporate movement and be able to enjoy your day? And this is general health stuff that we're talking about, as well as IgAN and CKD specific, because we all know and understand that eating with others when you're following a specific type of eating pattern for your health can be really stressful, and we don't need to take that on for our holiday. So when you show up as a guest, you can see these are central themes. Schedule and plan ahead. Make sure you have time for movement, but don't worry about filling your plate with all of your favorites. Take a to-go plate. Ask for a to-go plate. Most people have so much leftovers that there are TV commercials and memes and everything else about what do we do with the leftovers, right? So it's okay to ask, make small portions, or even consider like bringing that second plate home and freezing, especially if you're visiting somebody that you love, that you are comfortable with and can actually be honest with. You can say, oh, I really love that dish that you have. Would it be okay if I could have some extra? Because that is the best way to show that you are enjoying your host's company, is to actually ask for more food. And always remember that it's just one day and to enjoy yourself. And after that meal, instead of, rolling yourself to the couch and watching football and drinking alcohol, get up, do dish duty, and put a little extra movement into that post meal before you then can relax with everybody else. It will help you feel a lot less sluggish. You can put your own leftover plate or food in the freezer, and then you can sit and enjoy your company. But you want to make sure that you feel good and that your emotional cup is full at the end of the day, and not that you feel slothful and tired and your blood pressure is going through the roof because of all of the food that high salt food that you've had and the alcohol. So let's get into these recipe swaps and ideas. Okay, when it comes to general recipe swaps, you don't have to take on everything. This does not need to be, I am revamping my entire Thanksgiving menu. Pick maybe one or two dishes and start there. Consider swapping ingredients and recipes to decrease salt or sodium, potassium, phosphorus, extra calories. You don't have to pick all of it, and you don't have to pick all of the meal. Just pick substitutions that you know that you're going to be able to retain the quality of the product of your food, and that can be done easily and correctly. So my double boiling of the mashed potatoes is a great example. No one on that table is going to know that you double boiled the mashed potatoes. You do not need to make a healthier version of everything. Just try a few things and put those on your plate. And if you're following a gluten-free eating pattern, watch out for gravy, soups, salad dressings, dips. Things that can be thickened with flour are food products that often will have gluten. So if you're attending something and you can bring your own gravy, or you can make your own, that's a great way. But remember, there are a ton of gluten-free options naturally. Veggies and fruit, beans, lentils, tofu, meat and dairy, oils and butter, quinoa, corn, rice, beans, lentils, tofu, oat, millet, buckwheat. And as Gisela mentioned in the beginning of this webinar, we also have been writing some nutrition blogs as well on the IgAN website. And I have here on the bottom right corner, if you're interested, a gluten-free diet blog. So you can kind of see what are the positives if you don't know or you're considering, or that's not interest. Educate yourself. What is important? Why would somebody eat this way? And what are things that may have gluten in it that I didn't realize? So ultimately, you're trying to build a plate like this, okay? You can see my plate's full of lots of different vegetables. It's got a little turkey leg there. Even if you have been told to follow a high protein diet, that turkey leg is going to fulfill your protein needs. And it has a little bit, you see, of the mashed potatoes. The mashed potatoes don't take up the whole side of my plate. It's majority of plants. And then it has some of the good stuff in moderate portions. You want to make sure you stay well hydrated. If you follow fluid restriction, make sure you know where that is to worry about, and add little bits of flavor at the proportion that is appropriate for you. So there's my gravy boat there. So with our appetizers, choose low salt or unsalted fresh foods instead of dips. These can be a nice way to just get the salt off your plate. And great examples is put out a veggie tray or a fruit tray. Choose hummus to add to that. That tends to be pretty good. And then you can use unsalted crackers or things like popcorn, like Skinny Pop, that are low in salt naturally. Some good main dish swaps is make sure you pay attention to the marinade you're using. Make that low in sodium. And then you can find no salt marinades or brines, not brines because that ultimately is salt, but seasoning for your dish. And you can always use lemon and red pepper flakes and pepper and things like that. So a great example here of a swap would be, in place of turkey, you can add the veggie pot pie. And this recipe is on our cookbook site, and it is kidney friendly. If you choose to go for turkey, great. But the veggie pot pie is also a festive option as well. When it comes to side dishes, thinking about choosing fresh vegetables, and it says instead of canned, but ultimately making sure to rinse your canned. Choosing lighter oils instead of the butter and the sugar to just kind of make your dish generally more healthy is always good. Even something like a lower sodium product can help with that canned version, and then generally reducing the oil. So one example there would be these honey glazed carrots, which are absolutely beautiful, but honey is sugar. And if you're concerned about that, then you can always go with this oven roasted carrot, which don't have that extra added sugar. Another one would be green beans. Green bean casserole is decadent, and you can either switch out for the green beans almondine, or you could go for a lower fat or lower sodium canned soup that goes into the green bean casserole and make it just a little bit lighter and a little bit easier on your health. And then if you didn't want to double boil, or you want to go a little further with the mashed potatoes and you don't want to put mashed potatoes on your plate, totally fine. A nice alternative to mashed potatoes that's a little bit lighter is a mashed cauliflower option. And when it comes to desserts, we want to choose freshly made, ideally. If you choose one with a package, read its labels, because freshly made foods tend to have less phosphorus when they're homemade, and you have the opportunity to substitute. You can substitute plain yogurt for sour cream or reduced fat. You can use less nuts or chocolate. You can just make the choice your own. You can swap out that pumpkin pie for an apple crisp, which makes it a little less potassium there. And think about when we make drinks, utilizing non-dairy milk instead of cow milk in coffee, hot chocolate, or eggnog. Non-dairy options tend to have less phosphorus and potassium. As always, you need to read the food label and make sure that you're not choosing a non-dairy product that has phosphorus added, if that's an issue for you. But it's a great way to still add some festive fun into your drinks as well. So ultimately, here is my kidney-friendly example menu. And you will notice that it is not terribly different than what we're used to. Choose a veggie tray with hummus, or a charcuterie board that has unsalted nuts and fruits and a fruit plate. Leave out the deli meat off that tray. Or if you have it, put it in smaller portions, make it take up less of the charcuterie board, and people will tend to choose the lighter options naturally. With dinner, consider adding a salad, green beans almondine. You could do mashed cauliflower or double boiled potatoes. Stuffing is great if you're following a gluten-free eating pattern. That could be a rice-based stuffing. It could be a gluten-free labeled product. Cranberry sauce, rolls, low sodium seasoned turkey. And then for dessert, you could easily include an apple crumble, a pumpkin cheesecake cookies, vanilla non-dairy ice cream and apple pie, and a fruit plate. I do not recommend all of these things at one sitting. I think you might need to be rolled out of the kitchen if you try, or the dining table. But definitely, these are all really nice options that are very traditional Thanksgiving. If you have a traditional food that you really like, it doesn't have to be Americanized Thanksgiving for it to be festive. Honoring those really great family recipes is super important, and making some of the swaps we talked about today so that it just is slightly kidney friendly can really help go a long way as well. I want to show you this plate again. really aligning your plate in the right proportions will allow you for the flexibility to enjoy your kidney friendly and non-kidney friendly options for your meal. So with that, I know that it was a little bit on the quick side, but I wanted to make sure we kind of get an opportunity to have all of our questions answered. Here is my contact information. You can find the recipes that we talked about today on cukebook.org, as well as if you need to talk through any nutrition information, my nutrition private practice information is up here, as well as I run an insurance-based nutrition private practice focusing in kidney health. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and we can go to it.
Thanks, Lauren. That was great. I'll start up some questions here. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them either in the chat or the Q&A. But um, one of the things that I love the way you presented everything is that those of you who know me personally, we've had the blessed fortune. We talk about nutrition, and I'm always kind of like joking because we always try to like strive for perfection. And one of the things, in showing here is that repetition of the plate. I'm remembering that typically we're pretty gluttonous when we go to eat, and that I think even the balance of my first plate is going to be like this and the second plate is going to be like that, like just like trying like these different mythologies when you go up there. And one of the hacks that I started doing when I go to a bigger family function or even like a friend's house, I'll just bring like some good Ziploc bags with me,
Yeah.
and I'll make a plate for myself, and then I make a smaller plate, and then at the end I kind of just take those little things and I'll put them aside, and I definitely throw them in the freezer. And I find that when I do it in the moment, I also hate for food to go to waste. So
Yes.
I just find like if I do it in the moment, I'm not tired and sluggish or like I forget, and then it's something to look forward to. Question regarding meat that I just got a aside on when it comes to turkey and dark meat versus white meat,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of portion control. Does it really matter? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it may matter, but like when it comes to portion control or trying to stick to one thing or the other in terms of being more kidney friendly, would you put any extra practice on that?
No, what I would say is that there's a couple things that for yourself you want to answer when you make that choice. If that dark meat option gets cooked once a year and you really love it, like
Right.
don't say no to that. It's a once a year thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, is white meat going to be leaner and more heart healthy, which all of us, regardless of kidney health, and those of us who have cholesterol issues, which very much goes in line with any kidney related issue, we want to think about cholesterol. But at the same time, I wouldn't, that is one that I would enjoy myself for that meal and be okay with. It's really about the amount, not necessarily white versus dark.
Awesome. And what is the secret to mashed cauliflower? Like for the consistency, what would you say is the
Yeah.
secret there?
That one's a tough one. I think pouring in any type of, whether you're doing like whether it's non-dairy cream or a creamer, going slow. And I've always found, regardless of any type of like dairy or fat addition, I always add half or less first and then look for consistency and slowly add to my own taste or portion.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to cauliflower, you can't go wrong with just roasting cauliflower until it's like burnt and wonderful. If you ever had a cauliflower steak,
Steak.
it is amazing. So that's personally, I wouldn't choose mashed cauliflower if I was putting it on my plate. I would go with that
Very charred.
roasted, yeah, charred. But slowly adding the fat to it to get the consistency is the right way to do it.
That sounds good. That sounds
But I
good.
love,
And I think roasting and broiling the any vegetable honestly is like I'm a big fan of the air fryer.
yeah,
All of a sudden things just kind of have like a better taste and texture and it feels more indulgent.
Yeah,
even when it's still pretty healthy.
absolutely. But it's so interesting. When you're talking about how you personally go and you do you do your first and second plate at the same time. I think that helps all of our scarcity mindset when it comes to Thanksgiving, where, you walk up or like it translates to anything, right? You walk up and you're like, oh, I got all that yummy food. But if you do it right away, then you know that somebody else isn't going to get that piece that you wanted, right? You can have it.
Mhm.
You just don't have to have it all at one sitting.
Yeah, the fear. Smashed Brussels sprouts in the air fryer. That's another good one, Carly. I love Brussels sprouts. I do have to watch them for I believe there's some good chunky potassium in there, right? Or not in a Brussels sprouts or but I think it's how they're prepared too, probably. You get those honey glazed
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
that stuff starts to add up to it. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Brussels sprout tacos are popular in my
Oh, I've
home.
not had Brussels
Like
sprouts.
charred, like char them up and then put them in a tortilla with like shallots.
Yeah. Oh, that's
That's
good. Yeah, that is really good.
Mhm.
And for the most part, like Brussels sprouts are one of those that they fall on that low, that like they can be high on many potassium, but they're on the lower side of high.
Yeah.
So they can be added in. If you're someone that really worries about potassium, what I would recommend is look up the potassium list. There are many on the internet, and identify for yourself what the highest ones are, like things like
Mm,
cooked spinach or the potatoes, so that you just have a few in your mind's eye as you're like, okay, these are the things I can go for the Brussels sprouts. I'm just not going to go for the creamed spinach. You know,
yep. Yeah.
those simple changes. There's
And
also,
it's true, you know what you said when you cook spinach, it gets so small that you just end up eating more of it too. And on top of that, it's already concentrated. So now you're like
yeah,
you're basically microdosing on
yes.
something you shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I mean, potassium is great for our bodies because it actually helps regulate our blood pressure. So we don't want to overly restrict if we don't need to. But it's something in the kidney world that it is a very personalized recommendation of if you should or should not. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you never want to do harm. But yeah, so I do love that veggie pot pie recipe. I've made that a few times, and
Hmm.
it's really fun. It's really good. I don't usually the recipe I showed. It has the ramekins. I don't usually do it that way. I take a pie plate, I make the recipe, and then you just put one pie crust on top. And by putting one pie crust on top, you get all the yummy feels of the pie crust as you eat it. But it's really about the veggies in it.
The soup.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I like to add chickpeas to it because in there, I don't think it is in that recipe, but I add a can of rinsed chickpeas, and then it gives you that replacement of chicken texture that can be really nice too, and add some protein and fiber.
That's a nice comfort food too. I'm a big fan of pot pie.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
it
So,
happened later in life. I didn't grow up with it. But it came later in life. That's awesome. I'm trying to look to see if any other recipe questions. If anyone thinks of anything, and I'll be sure to email this out. But if there's like a holiday favorite, and you're just looking for like one or two tips on how we can make that a little bit friendlier. And again, it's one day. Uh, I
absolutely.
follow a 80/20 rule. I hope most people do 80% of the time. I'm really trying to stay focused on what I'm doing with everything in my life. And
Yeah.
then 20% of the time I kind of space out a little bit and I don't feel so guilty.
Yeah.
But one day and even though there is a holiday season, it's just like even if it's the 3 days going over the holiday season over a course of 2 to 3 months,
Mhm.
you should be okay.
Yeah.
So
I see we have a sweet potato casserole as a must eat in my family. That's awesome. There's a lot of ways to make sweet potato casserole, and there's some really like it's also one of the traditions in my family, but not with the marshmallows.
mm,
Um, you could double boil it, like you could totally double boil and still make it. We use banana, another kidney, oh my
oh,
goodness. I've not tried to boil banana, so if anyone's tried to boil banana, you can let me know. Um, but if you wanted to make it that way, you could boil the potatoes. And we use a
I
sweetener
boiled
replacement banana.
I boiled a plantain, a sweet plantain. There's actually a dish we make. It's kind of like a shepherd's pie, but it's made with sweet plantains.
Yeah. And
Um,
and I know that they do boil. I've just never boiled a banana. I'm gonna maybe have to
yeah,
do that as an
I boiled a sweet plantain and made like a mashed sweet plantain base. This came out pretty good. And then you kind of like layer it like a shepherd's pie. I usually do it with like a ground turkey, and
example.
like veggies and pick my cheese of choice. But it's like something you can eat too much of, but it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those like fun things to make and
Mhm.
but I also want to boil a regular banana. More content coming soon.
Right, exactly. We'll have to put that on there. But yeah, and cornbread dressing is also great too. Um, and when it comes to cornbread dressing, you just got to watch out for the hidden salt in there. And as long as you're utilizing low salt options, you should be fine. So we've got lots of opportunities to still enjoy our favorite things.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, I'm thinking about your plantain recipe. One of my favorite winter recipes is actually lentil shepherd's pie,
Mm,
which is super yummy. I don't have that recipe on my off the top of my head to give you the link to it, but ultimately it's something you could also make kidney friendly because lentils get a bad rap because they're higher in potassium, but they're so filling and such a great protein source. Um, you could just soak the lentils, like
right.
canned lentils, soak them overnight. And that's a great alternative. And then double boil the potatoes, and now you've got low potassium lentil shepherd's pie.
Yeah. Like these comfort foods. I
Yeah.
think there's it may take a little bit of work and I also think if you're overly concerned about your diet, I've kind of been the spectrum. I was like I said, I was diagnosed with IgAN 30 years ago. I've gone through the pre-transplant diet. I'm on the post-transplant diet.
Mhm.
Uh, my potassium was out of control at one point. Now it's fine, so I'm not watching it as much. I eat to my labs. That's my reco always for
Right.
everyone.
Yes.
Less stress, but finding things that you still like to eat and then just play around,
Mhm.
play around with it and see how it works on your next appointment.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. I'm a big fan of if you're trying to do something with your 80/20 rule, if you're on that 80%, you're working on something new, write down what you've been eating for the last few days before your labs, right?
hmm
And then you kind of have a little bit more of an idea and ask for help from somebody who knows how to help you. So whether that's finding a dietitian, or if you've got a real engaged doctor, like find somebody that can help you, so that you can live much more stress free, like you do now, being able to know exactly what is works best for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I love to eat. And I was gonna say, if you go somewhere and you're at that point, because I remember points in my life where I was very concerned. I had a very limited diet or what I felt safe eating.
Mhm.
I'd try to eat a little bit before you go somewhere, so you're
Yep.
not going starving, and then also bring a snack that
Yeah.
you can have.
Yeah.
And depending on how close you are to the person, feel free to ask them what they're serving.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that one of the things is when you are like really sick and if you're at that point where you're really watching your diet, I'm assuming your friend or family member is aware of that wherever you're going. And I think it's totally fine to just be like, I'm not trying to be a
Yeah.
PETA, but I have some dietary restrictions and I'm happy to bring my own side. I'm happy to bring my own thing. Uh, could you just run me through the menu? I mean, don't create less stress for yourself
Yeah.
rather than showing up and
Well,
that can be like,
yeah, it ultimately creates less stress for the host too. Remember
mm-hmm,
that. Like, because if you're going someplace and they know that you have these needs, like they don't know where to start. It's so much easier for you to bring something that you like that everyone can enjoy and just to be upfront and ask them, right? That's
yep,
all anybody wants to know is, especially around a holiday related to food, is no one wants to make all the food and have no one eat it because they can't.
Yep. And it's very easy sometimes with some of the sides to make them with or without cheese, with or without meat,
Yeah,
an
exactly.
extra little portion on the side.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you learn through time. It's okay to be vulnerable and tell
Yep.
people, hey, look, I want to enjoy, I want to come over, have a good time. These are my restrictions.
Hmm.
Um, don't feel guilty about it. And I
Hmm.
think the host always wants their guests to have a good time and you want to have a good time too. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, well, I don't see any other questions popping up. I don't know if anyone has any other thing they want to mention. Cindy, I'm gonna expect some sort of a plate to come via FedEx or
Picture.
something because I'm imagining your amazing Thanksgiving. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be sending out a recording of this, which will include the presentation. And as always, Lauren is available through her private practice to help with any guidance. So we'll be sure to reiterate that in the follow-up. But thank you so much, Lauren, for your time. This was great.
Yeah, it was wonderful talking to you today, as always.
All right. Take care,
Yep.
everyone. Bye.